Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Visser, and in this podcast, I will take you on a journey through the wilderness of scientific research and experiential knowledge. Together, we will clear a path to optimizing health, well-being, and longevity. I am a former Minister of Health and Sports with a PhD in medical sciences, a published researcher in the fields of obesity, lifestyle medicine, and longevity. I started my career path over 3 decades ago as a doctor of chiropractic. I'm excited to share my methods, know-how, and experience with you. So please join me on the Visser podcast. Welcome to episode number 15. We'll continue on last week's episode, and that is how to move the needle as far as longevity and as far as health span. And as we know, quick repeat, there's absolutely nothing you can do that moves the needle more than enhancing your Vo2 Max, meaning your endurance engine, strength combined with muscle volume, so hypertrophy training. You have to start there. Nothing else moves the needle. Everything we're going to talk about next helps. Definitely you need to be doing, but the biggest movers, the biggest difference in how long you're going to live and how well you're going to live are those three. And we ended that episode with explaining how we need to have protein synthesis, and as we age we need more protein, and on average we're all too low on the protein. All right, so one of the things I need you to do is up your protein, up it in the morning definitely, so it kind of matches evening. That's as a basis, and that's because we need that protein synthesis. We need to keep as much muscle as we can when we age, and we know after 35 our muscle mass starts declining, and that's due to a whole plethora of reasons, aging being one of them. Okay, so today, nutrition, it's a tough one. I mean, and it's my expertise. I'm an obesity specialist. I've done more studies than most people on obesity in different regions, different continents. Looked at the interplay, the hormonal interplay, looked at, environmental interplay. I looked at, really through a holistic lens, and then back into, the cellular level. What is sugar doing to us? How does, our insulin and glucose affect our bodies, and how does our bodies react to it on a cellular level? So really looked at it from all sides, and it stays elusive. It stays something that we need to really manage individually. Yes, the environment plays a big role. Yes, we can create, where we have to eliminate obesogenic environments. So that's kind of looking at it on the big picture, and we're doing that, creating walking paths and all that stuff. But further in that, when we're talking in this video, I want to really focus in on you personally. How do you do it personally? I mean, I just went through a journey where I've lost 9 kilos, and it seems like since my university years, or right after, I've been bulking this whole time. So the good news was, though, I've at times on and off, but I've kept my weight training up, I've kept my strength training up, and I've stayed active. So that has helped me immensely to be able to bounce back and to be able to say, okay, it's time to drop the fat. So what I want to do, just to kind of start, and then we'll go back into my story and your story and how this journey, and my journey, could help your journey. I want to talk about massive fat loss, okay? I want to talk about people that have a BMI of above 27, 30, morbid obese. the choices before this was limited, really, bariatric surgery. And within bariatric surgery, you had the balloon, which doesn't really work, and then you had a partial that didn't really work. It's really the whole way or, no way. And even the whole way has issues with it, brings issues with it. So recently in the last couple of years, we've had some interesting options that for this group of people, if you fall into this group, that can be useful. And here I'm talking about these new drugs, GLP-1 inhibitors and GIP inhibitors, that show a lot of promise, that have shown to really drop the weight equivalent to gastric bypass. And so we're talking about Ozempic as a drug, same drug, Wegovy, just a new name. And that's GLP-1 inhibitor, so it inhibits your craving for food, it makes you eat less. And the other one, the best one, I guess, is from Eli Lilly, which is Mounjaro, which is a GLP-1 and a GIP inhibitor. Super effective. I mean, there's no ways about it. I know in Hollywood, everyone's been jumping on it to lose a little weight. It's not for a little weight. It's for people that are really, don't see the light anymore at the end of the tunnel. Have tried everything, can't get down from morbid obesity. This is one. These are drugs that can help. However, this is what the warning is. So there's always a warning with using drugs. There's very few drugs that don't have side effects. So I think the first big one here is you're gonna get muscle loss. So if you're gonna go on these drugs, you need to be weightlifting. You need to be strength training, because you're gonna get muscle loss from using these drugs. So yeah, not good. Okay, so that's one. But we're always looking at, okay, does the benefit outweigh the risk? The other thing is that at some point you want to stop, and stopping is gonna take some work. It's gonna, you're gonna have to completely change your lifestyle. You're gonna have to change your eating habits. You're gonna have to teach yourself how to eat, and that's where, what we talk about today will have an effect. So that's what I wanted to say over that. If we go to, just most of us that, are above 35 and just don't drop weight like crazy anymore, and we need to lose weight, which is most of us. Whatever you think you're losing, you need to lose much more, all right? Because trust me, I've been in this for a long time, and people underestimate what they need to lose. There's a lot of organ fat accumulation, besides the fat that you see. And if you happen to be Asian, Indian, you have to watch out and really be careful that you don't have what we call skinny obesity. And skinny obesity is because, when we look at obesity, when I look at how healthy you are based on fat, I really want to look at what's your body composition. So what's your percentage of muscle compared to your percentage of fat in your body? And so we do that with a DEXA scan. We do that a little less accurately with the, the devices where you stand and you hold and there's electricity going to your body, and it can measure your body fat composition, muscle mass composition. The muscle, the body fat composition, I really like to see it around 15%. And so I really want to focus on the muscle side of things. So when we're looking at skinny fats, and the reason they're called skinny fats is because in some cultures, muscle mass is something that's harder to develop. Genetically, they have much less muscle mass. So, and they're still able to accumulate fat. So their body might look skinny. They might look good in clothes and not have this belly, not have this hanging fat like in the West, but they're still obese. Because when we look at the comparison of how much fat to how much muscle they have, which is not done with a BMI because BMI is not accurate in these cases. BMI we use as a rough gauge, but it's not an accurate gauge. And so we'll see that these people are susceptible to diabetes, pre-diabetic, all the things that obese people are susceptible to. And they look, they look like they're, skinny or, in good weight. So be careful. You really need to measure this stuff, and you can't always see it. The other groups that we've also studied is, in Central Latin America, Ecuador, where people are very short. It's called stunting. It's because they've basically had generations and generations of really poor nutrition, and genetically they've downregulated their growth hormone in their culture, and what you see is that these people are all shorter people. The problem with that is that they get to the problems of obesity much quicker, diabetes, all the complications that come with obesity, much quicker than we do, that have some length on us. So that's another group that is needs to really watch what they're doing and how they're doing, because it's a dangerous cycle that we've seen. So enough of that. Let's go to weight loss. We need to lose some weight, and I'll take my own example. I lost 9 kilos. It's quite a bit of weight, and you couldn't really see it that much on me because I was always training. I was always a big guy, so. But I knew I had a lot of organ fat also, etc. So what did I have to do? How do we start this? Well, first of all, I think you need to absolutely do a lab test, and you need to get your blood checked, because we need to know that we're not fighting uphill. Okay, so you need to get your thyroid panel, you need to get your hormone panel, and we need to see, are you pre-diabetic, are you not? Is that clear? How is your insulin? Also look at ApoB, but we'll go into that on another episode. I really want to just stick to the hormones here. If your T4 and your T3 are off, if your testosterone is off, if whatever hormone could be off, it could be offsetting and basically playing against you losing weight or trying to get fitter. So we really have to look at that and make sure that's in order. That's one. Okay, 2. When we start this journey, we want to look at, in general, how do we, and I'm always going from a kind of a macro to a micro view. What's my purpose with this? Yes, it's weight loss. I look good, I feel better. Yes, definitely. I want to avoid, all that comes with holding a lot of weight, holding a lot of fat. I don't want to have to deal with gynecomastia because I'm holding, and that's, fat becomes metabolically active and can start producing estrogen in men, and where you see, breast formation and stuff. You don't want that. And that's the worst spectrum kind of side. Also, the way we use fuel in our body, we become inefficient. It's bad for our heart. Our heart has to push much more. Cardiovascular disease becomes huge when we're overweight. That's a huge risk every day. Elevated levels of LDL, and really LDL is not that good of an indicator. That's why we're going to look at ApoB. But the triglycerides, the HDL, all this stuff gets out of whack when we gain weight, and also internal in the organs. We'll see that everything that we do is going to be more difficult in life. Our health gets to hang on a balance. It's really detrimental. So we've got to drop weight. We have to drop the weight, okay? And so how do we do this? Well, we have to look at the big, we got to remove the big stuff out first. So we got to drop sugar. That's simple as that. And I'll give you once a week where you can do whatever you want. And, not go crazy, but have your sugar down, whatever, if that's your thing. Really, we need to drop the sugar. Carbohydrates need to be low, and if you're pre-diabetic or you're already diabetic, your sugars just need to be, your carb intake daily needs to be 20%, period. Your protein needs to be high, your fat can be up there, but your carbs need to be low, period. No ifs or buts about it. No sugars. We need to really get off the, processed food, highly processed foods. Get off of it. Stop it. And if you need to have some, whatever, do it on your free day. But get off of it. You need to really make a decision that, listen, I'm gonna, because this is also for your health. It's just not losing weight, but it's for your health. And alcohol consumption. Yep. And I'm one. I started late, and I've always had a good handle on it, but lately, there's times in your life where, depending on what job you do, whatever you do, you think, okay, every night you have a drink after dinner or two, or you meet with friends, and this can become a habit, and it can become an issue with your liver, with fat, because it's basically calories coming in, lots of them. It's all sugar. So what I've done now is I drink in the weekends. I mean, if there's a special occasion, yes, I will do, but I really keep myself from it. And, I kind of like, I say, okay, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to drink something good. If I'm going to drink a wine, I'm going to drink a good wine. So I'm not going to waste this calorie thing on a bad, cheap wine. Forget about that. Those days were never there, but they're not there, okay? If I want to enjoy a nice drink, it's going to be a good drink, all right? I'm not going to have like a, from the bar, I like my rum and Coke Zero or my rum straight. I'm not going to have like a Bacardi or Captain, Morgan or one of these cheap freaking things. I'm going to have a freaking good rum because I'm just going to have one. I want to enjoy it, okay? So that's also a change in mindset. So yes. So when you make those changes, your body will start moving. So what else I think on the macro level that we can do? I think definitely, I'm doing it mostly for my health, mostly for well-being, mostly for longevity and health span. And that is intermittent fasting, or I like to call it, time feeding. So I have an 8-hour window where I feed myself, or less. It's like 7 hours. And so to give you an example, mine starts at 2 p.m. is my first meal, and then I, will eat another meal at 7. And then in between, I'll do some protein, I'll, whatever is there. Not too much, and so 2 things happen. One, obviously, I'm eating less calories throughout the day because I'm not continuously, stuffing my face. 2, and this is super important, that the adversity mimetics are activated. And what does that mean? I mean, I'm giving my body a perceived adversity, biological adversity, and that means my body is thinking, holy shit, I'm not getting enough food. And it's perceived because it's getting way plenty food. And I'm making sure that my protein is up. My first meal protein, my last meal protein, my middle meal protein. So I'm not panicking. And remember, I'm someone that came from 7 feeding times a day. Okay, because back in the day, in athletic training and lifting and everything, that's what we did. We ate, 6-7 times a day to keep going, to keep it, strong. So coming from that to going, okay, I'm going to eat twice a day and I'm going to restrict it. Oh my God. Mentally, it was like I had to get over this mental hurdle. Like, this is impossible. Oh my God, I'm going to waste away. I'm going to, all these thoughts. Nothing's going to happen. If you're, over 35 and you're just having trouble keeping the weight down, which most of us have, this is the way to do it. And you're activating adversity mimetics. And what does that mean? It means there's 3 pathways that are activated in this adversity mimetics, and they're critical. Okay, so one of the things that you're doing is you're activating mTOR, down-regulating mTOR in this time when you're not feeding. So when you're not feeding, like the 16 hours, I only drink water, coffee, no sugar or tea, and I will take my vitamins, and I do a creatine pre-workout drink, or when I work out. I work out on a fasted state, so I work out with no eating. I'll have my first meal right after my workout, but you can do that either way. So when we start fasting, we're changing things up. And so we're down-regulating mTOR, which basically, and at the same time, we're upregulating AMPK, and then that is activating the sirtuins, 1 through 7, especially sirtuin 1, which is basically DNA repair, okay? AMPK gets triggered by glucose and insulin, so if that's high, it's not going to go up, so that needs to be low. So the AMPK, that needs to have it upregulated, glucose needs to be down, insulin needs to be down, you need to be in a fasted state. With the mTOR, same way. So when mTOR is deregulated, it's because leucine, isoleucine, these amino acids are down. But we need these for training. So as you see, we're pulsing this whole thing, all right? What does that mean? Meaning that during our feeding time, during the 8 hours, we're shutting everything off. We're making sure we're getting enough protein in, protein synthesis, which means mTOR is up, AMPK is down, sirtuins aren't working. But then when we go in a fasted state, boom, it turns on, 16 hours. And we start cleansing. We start, doing autophagy, which is, taking all the garbage out of the body, the bad proteins, everything we got. We're looking at, DNA repair. So there's a lot going on during this time, and it's hugely beneficial to us. This is the anti-aging, the three pillars until now that we've seen. So it's a huge one. Anyway, so we have to incorporate this, some kind of intermittent fasting for our health and for longevity. And with the intermittent fasting, what I want you to do, and you can play with it, see what works for you. Once you stabilize your weight, see what keeps you there. Weigh the same time every day. So I do it in the morning when I wake up, I weigh myself. And at night I'll weigh myself, but I know that from the night to the morning I'll lose 1 kilo. That's just water, damp, whatever. And that's normal. So your weight will swing. What you want to see is that you have a consistent lowering of weight throughout the weeks and months. All right. Take the weight loss as slow as possible. Okay, no quick weight loss because it's quick weight gain. Let your body get used to it. Okay, so next, let's look at diets. We have to, every diet is going to be restrictive. We have to do some restrictive work, okay, to lose fat and to eventually stay, healthy, because we have to eliminate stuff. So what I want you to do, if you don't have other concerns, and we'll talk about those other concerns, is look for the diet that suits you best. That basically is the one, and we talked about this in other chapters. Chapter 4, and we're going to go 1 and 4 right now. I think that's the two big ones that we're kind of overhauling. So what I want you to do is find the diet that's least restrictive for you. A good place to look. The diets that are rated always come back rated pretty high. You have the Mediterranean diet, which I personally like. It has the phenols, polyphenols in there with the red wine, the olive oil. I like their workings. And, you know, if you look at the blue zones, a lot of times that's kind of the direction they're going. The other one would be, that's rated very high, is the pesco vegetarian. So vegetarians that eat fish. And the reason for this is that omega-3 fatty acids, HA, and it is critical for our health. We need fatty fish. We need fatty fish a couple of times a week. I mean, at least, or we need to supplement. Period. You need that. Just for your brain health, for your blood-brain barrier, for your, you know, your whole physiology. We need it. The other thing is D3. And if your complexion is darker, kind of like mine, or even darker, you need more D3. Okay? I know we're built for the sun. That's where we grew up. But guess what? Because of the melatonin in our skin, we need more D3. So we need to supplement with D3. And I think if we, you know, just touch upon, I like simple. I use AG1 as a vitamin, mineral supplement. It's an all-in-one powder. It is phenomenal. It covers all the bases. I like it simple. And then I, you know, supplement with a D vitamin. We're going to talk about gut health, and there you can go to Seed, and they have an amazing product line of probiotics. But we're also going to talk a little more about that. So that's on the vitamin stuff side. Going back to diet, so I think that's one. The second thing I need you to look at as a big picture is, how is my gut health doing? I mean, man, all right, gut health, incredible. We need to really not underestimate the gut health, because, and we talked about this in episode 1, 2, and 3. We looked at it. It affects our brain health, okay? Dopamine production is here. Different vitamins get produced. Biotin, B12, folic acid, thiamine, vitamin, you know, K. It's amazing. Calcium uptake into the bones gets determined here. T cells, immune system, okay? Serotonin, right? Happy. Melatonin, sleep, you know, dopamine, motivation. I mean, this all gets developed, gets produced in the gut with the gut biome. And we know, you know, we're talking of trillions of cells that live there. So we need to know how to manage this. I mean, before we just thought, you know, didn't have, you know, it's just there for digestion. Yes, absolutely it's there for digestion, but it's there for so much more. And it has such an effect on our heart, our brain, our whole body, our immune system. If your gut microbiome is off, you're off, guaranteed. And what makes it off? If you've been on a, you know, simple, hey, you're eating sugars, it's off. You're eating processed foods, it's gonna be off. You've taken antibiotics, it's dead. You're taking NSAIDs, you're killing it. You're doing a lot of antacids. Trust me, you're killing it, all right? So how do we build this? How do we protect this? Because if you're killing it, you know, the microbiome needs to be super diverse, right? And it needs to be with healthy microbiomes, healthy cells. So how do we do this? Well, and in these previous episodes I talked about this. One is, you know, when we're born, we're in a completely neutral environment in the womb. Okay? Anesthetic. It's like the perfect environment. When we go through the vaginal canal, is the first wash that we get of all these microbiota that eventually will be our microbiota that will implant in us. So if you weren't born naturally, or you're not giving birth naturally, you got your first challenge. So then for sure you need to breastfeed as long as possible, because that's where the second doses of the microbiota come in to the baby, to protect the baby. Okay, so how do we, how do we protect the microbiome? Well, this is a quick one. We need to start eating fermented foods. And yes, also fiber, but listen to me. This is a nuance. If your microbiota is not diverse enough, the fiber can actually go rampant with you because it's not prepared to digest that fiber. Okay? So we first need to diversify our microbiota. And how do we do that? Well, we do that with, supplementing with probiotics, prebiotics, and we can get those from Seed. That's a great company. Look at it as an example. The other thing, I think more importantly, is, start eating fermented foods. We need to start with fermented foods because in the research, fermented foods have shown to diversify the microbiota beyond what you're eating. So what are fermented foods? Kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, etc. You can get lists of them. Kombucha, you can get lists of how to make it, where to get it, how to get it. We need to incorporate this in our diet. And then we can start adding the different fibers. And what we need to add is, the plant-based fibers. All of them. Diverse. The more diverse, the more colors you have, the better. Okay? So vegetables, greens, seeds, you name it. All right? Beans, all this stuff. Diversify, make it very diverse how you eat and to keep the microbiota going. So now we've kind of hit that part. We'll go back into the diet. So we're doing a 16-8 or whatever you want to call it. We need to have that fasting period. We've cut the sugars. We make sure our protein is high. And I need to look for something. Okay. So we're on an intermittent fasting or time feeding, except for once a week, or if you can, twice a week. Look at it. And what I want you to do there is I want you to throw your body off. I don't want your body to get completely used to only doing intermittent fasting because the body has a tendency to get used to that and it's not good. We need to have some carbs that come in and, so that our system just doesn't, convert to only converting fats, but also can convert, can manage carbs in our body. So we need to keep our system active and flexible. Okay, so that's that 1 day off or 2 days off. See what you can do, see how you can manage that. Okay, the real reason that I want us to do time feeding is because we need that time. We need that fasting time. By being fat all day, the sirtuins stay off, the epigenome degrades faster, and our DNA doesn't get a chance to repair itself. Imagine what effect this has for our longevity, our health span. All right? That's why it's critical. Let's go back to the diets. Okay, when we're looking at these diets, like I said before, pick one that's least resistant to you, that you can do for life, and stick to it. Most diets work. We just need to stick to them. All right. If, however, you come to the conclusion that you would like to have a plant-based diet or a vegan diet, there's a couple of things you need to watch for. All right. You need to do your homework on these because it's a challenge. One, to keep your protein up so that you don't go into muscle wasting. So you need to supplement with isolate whey protein. And I know some vegetarians will say, I can get my proteins from beans, legumes, and mixing. The volume you're going to have to eat is going to be an issue with how much calories you're going to be taking in to get to that level. So you're not going to be able to reach the protein level you need to reach at a healthy state. So that's one. I think there's a couple other things that we need to look at. And that is you need to supplement with B12, D3 of course, omega-3 fatty acids, iron, zinc, calcium, selenium, yeah, so with, there's a little bit more work when you go vegan, plant-based diet. So be aware of that. If you have, if you want to focus on brain health and you're saying, listen, that's important for me, my family has had issues, then I think you obviously would move more towards the Mediterranean diet. If you suffer from anxiety, depression at all levels, epilepsy, etc., seizures, you need to go ketogenic. And there's a lot of studies on this. So ketogenic becomes your choice. And it's going to take 2 years. They say 2 to 5 years. But in 2 years, you'll be able to benefit from the ketogenic diet if you have any of those. And then you can kind of slowly taper it off and know that whenever symptoms come back, when you start feeling it, you go back on the ketogenic diet. So that's an important one. And that's the nuances within diets. Other than that, I really feel that I want you to get into something that you really can sink your teeth into and say, I can do this for life. This is me. This is my thing. And do it and get healthy, Yes, manage our weight because that's part of our health issue, and we know obesity is a pandemic. It kills more people than anything else. With the cardiovascular disease that comes with it and diabetes and all that. And with our nutrition, we can do so much. I mean, there isn't anyone I know that has type 2 diabetes or that's pre-diabetic that we can't get back, okay, to not having it. So before it's too late, do this. Do this for your family. Do this for your health. And stick with it. And look at the rules. I'm very, loose with this. We're going to talk about some other stuff that is super important in the next chapter, which is sleep, stress management, hot and cold therapy, some cool stuff that really has major effect on our health that we can do at zero to no cost and incorporate. But I think this is nutrition is a big part. It's something we deal with every day. We deal with all the time. It's amazingly tough. You need, most people feel that you need a huge budget to be able to be healthy, eat healthy. But in reality, if you take all your sodas out of your refrigerator and replace it with water, you got a good start. Start cutting out sugars and start cutting out processed foods, highly processed foods, for as much as you can. So get to it, get healthy. You're gonna feel so much better. And really, when you see the before and after pictures of myself, I didn't gain any muscle. I lost the fat, both internally, externally, and God, I feel like $1,000,000. Yeah, I got a little bit of cold today. That's why my voice is like this, but that's just my immune system doing push-ups right now. And it's great. I feel great. I feel man, I feel light. I'm like, boom, moving better, exercising better, and the better I look, the more I'm motivated. So yes, it's great, and I had to turn that switch. I'm 58, so it's either now or never. And nutrition was one that, I never ate badly. I just ate a lot, and I had a good time, and I had my drinks, and the calorie, I kept myself at a calorie full. My tank was always full. So there was no, perceived struggle in me, which is very bad. So what was happening to me, I wasn't, giving my body any perceived resistance, any push to really be at optimum health and to be clearing my body of bad proteins, to be, reconstructing my epigenome and repairing my DNA. And so when we're fed all day, we're really causing damage, all right? We need that stress, perceived stress to our bodies. And we know we need it. That's why we exercise. That's why we do what we do there in the movement sector. And we need to do it with our feeding sector too, because, you know, we're living in a world where we can eat and order in, and there's food and drinks everywhere, all around us, all day, and we can just keep ourselves full. There's no need to go into starvation, into, you know, if you're living in the West, which is the most dangerous thing for us. So let's keep this going. The nutrition is a big one. It's a tough one. Start it. Look at the big rules we talked about, and you'll see the results. And make sure you're able to stick to it. Don't do anything radical. You know, when people go and do these meal plans, they're great. Maybe you need to do that to get to a weight where you're kind of saying, okay, now I can see the light. You know, I've gotten help. But when you get these meals delivered, they're not teaching you anything. They're not teaching you how to kind of live for real. You still need to live. We still need to, you know, make business deals, go out or see our friends or socialize and eat in social. What do you do then? You know, you're running around with your meal prep kit. So you need to get back to knowing how to do it yourself and knowing how your body reacts to different things. The one thing that I left out, which is very important, I think, is besides the, you know, we talked about the blood test to look at your hormones and all that stuff and make sure your insulin is doing what it needs to be doing, low, you know, glucose in your body. We also would benefit from wearing a 24/7 glucose monitor. And Levels is one of these companies that has those. And what that does is really, because, you know, all of us react differently to foods. I could be, you know, having some red wine and my glucose doesn't spike, and, you know, my wife or someone else could be having the same red wine and her glucose spikes like crazy. This could be with bread, it could be with different things. So the one thing we do is, because we're so individual and it depends on our gut biome, it depends on so many different factors, that I really like when you wear the 24/7 glucose monitor, you can actually see what foods affect you negatively, and to be able to stay away from those. And some foods that you think might not affect you negatively, or that you think are negative, maybe not affecting you. So you can incorporate those back into your diet. So look at that. I think it's an amazing tool, and it could really be helpful into more specifically, you know, putting your diet into, you know, making it personalized. So that's my last tip for the nutrition. Well, not my last tip. We're going to be talking about this over and over again. But I just wanted to kind of review it so you get an idea of where you need to go, where you need to start with this. And like I said before, the next episode, we'll have some really interesting stuff on what you could do, how to create brown fat and how to create beige fat and doing all that stuff and get your testosterone up. And so stay tuned. Subscribe, ring the bell notification, and keep joining me on this journey. Take care.